and really the focus of our session is really key, with the subtitle being just as important as the title. This title really says strategic marketing, really looking at the next 1 to 3 years. And really understanding not just the customers, but the markets and the market stages that we're actually in or not in. When we work with executives, whether it's at IBM, whether it's at General Electric and others, the focus is you can't decide where you are in this life cycle. You don't get to fantasize about it, you don't get to decide, you don't get to vote. It's where does the market put you at introduction? Whether it's an authorization type solution, whether it's web-based software, whether it's pharma, it's really where it is. And then your job in marketing, in tech marketing, in breakthrough marketing is to figure out how do you get to the next stage? How do you make profitability happen? Net present values notwithstanding. My name is Michael Eckhardt. Mark Cavett and I are co-managing directors of Chasm Institute. We've been working together for about 18 years now. What we really focus on is really just one thing. It's really technology or other breakthrough products and getting those, not just the early adopters, that's kind of the easy part, but getting into the normal marketplace. And we'll be talking about that this evening. Some tools, some methods, some practical frameworks that we've been tuning and working deeper and deeper on really since the first Crossing the Chasm book came out back in 1991. What's the focus? The focus is going to be really talking about common mistakes, common errors, and best practices around what we call breakthrough products. This can be a whole gamut. Could be insurance, could be pharma, could be web-based. The real difference is that a breakthrough product has 3 important attributes to it. Here's what's not a breakthrough product. Going from a 20 mile per gallon car to a 25 mile per, I get that that's hard. A little more plastic in the car, a little bit less metal, lighter weight. But nobody walks in the showroom going, oh my God, I better think about this for a minute. 20 to 25 or 25 to 35, that's a little scary. By the way, a 25 to 75 mile per gallon change does imply some change in your life as well. But we're going to focus on 3 attributes. Is there a change in behavior, a change in method, or a change in thinking required for the customer to now endorse and use your product? So if you want to summarize the 3 key words, it's a change in behavior, a change in skill, or a change in process. And the idea is if 2 out of 3 of those are a yes or a strong yes, then you're not going to Main Street. Main Street is really that area where mature markets reside. High profitability is there too, so don't diminish the importance of it, but a change in behavior, skill, or process. And if 2 out of 3 of those are yeses, it means you're going back to probably an early market, or at least back to what we call bowling alley, left-hand side. You will not have a tornado. Now, what that says is you may have one, it just won't happen at launch or in the first year to 2 going out. Really moving from a voice phone, which some of you might be old enough to remember when phones were just used for voice. Remember those old days, right? To something that's more like a smartphone. Was a smartphone a change in behavior, skill, or process for some people? Right? The keyboard change. How long did Palm work? By the way, the ones who introduced the product initially are very often not the ones who prosper later from it. Have you noticed it? So looking at the agenda, there's really a few key areas we want to hone in on. The first one is models for building what we call a common vocabulary. So when we talk about things like the chasm, or about a 9-point strategy, or about compelling reasons to buy, we don't each have a separate definition of what those mean. Secondly, we're going to talk about strategy options for you as a product manager or someone in the marketing function. And then third, a case study, kind of a fun one, taking it back to the mobile phone industry from its earlier time back to its present time, by the way, which is innovation. But innovation is important. It's really the lifeblood of any startup, certainly, but even large companies. When we work with a Hewlett-Packard or an IBM or others, they've got to innovate internally or acquire innovation. Could that be? Like Cisco, who acquired companies in 4.5 years. By the way, not all those turned out great, but they made some tremendous acquisitions along the way, along with some that probably did not work out the way intended. But innovation and how this relates to the product category lifecycle is what we're going to hit as well. And then lastly, something that Professor Shanahan wanted to make sure we cover, which is not just what's the strategic marketing objectives, frameworks, and tools, but what do we do after lunch on Monday or Tuesday? What do we start with? How do we implement this? And we call those the go-to-market programs. What's being done were two things. One is we actually have measures to decide how many people we believe actually reside in each one of these areas, and then two, that there is no smooth up and to the right S-curve. There's this gap we call the chasm. It's that divide between the early market and the rest of the marketplace. And so what we're going to do is take you through some examples that we've worked with over the last several years, and also apply on, you're doing a case, you're doing some authentication work, you're applying this to your key cases as well here in the room. So when we talk about the market development model, we take those customers on the previous page, technology enthusiasts, visionaries, etc., and now we model them into groups that represent markets. By the way, I should mention something to you. Many of you either have or will have an international career, and this model is not the same shape in all countries. If you do business with Japan, and you look at the early market in Japan for consumer goods, consumer electronics, they had digital cameras before we even could spell what that was. So the early market in Japan for consumer is actually much bigger than it would be in many other, like Germany or other parts of the world that are more pragmatic. But if you take the same country, Japan, and you talk about their corporate buying habits, how long it took actually Toshiba or Sony to put a PC on everybody's desk. So there's a sequence to these, and these 9 points actually will vary depending on which life cycle stage you're competing at. Early market, bowling alley, tornado, or Main Street. And I won't take you through the 9 points in detail other than to say that each one of these, as we go down this list, is actually a fundamental or a key element of the next step down in the process. Let's take a look and see what I mean. Target customer, I dare you to work on who are we targeting? Financially astute investors, geriatric patients, young people in high school, who are we targeting? The second piece that's related highly and closely with that is, what's the compelling reason to buy? What does that mean? But we see about an 85 to 90% predictability that if you know what stage you're in, and you're applying the 9 points fairly accurately and well and robustly, you've got like a 3-to-1 odds better than normal of actually making that life cycle stage work for you. It also says when you know the big boy you can't beat anymore, whether it's Apple in iPads versus what we heard from Motorola and from others like BlackBerry. And so it's kind of a reality check on things. But we're also think of this and say, ultimately, in summary, there's really 4 key takeaways to this part before we talk about the implementation and the go-to-market efforts that are coming forth next. The first one, which I think is a really important point to mention, is the technology adoption lifecycle can be used as a tool, a method for understanding customer behavior. Why they buy, how they buy, when they buy, and how whole product and all the other areas need to change along the way. 2, strategy must precede execution. That means part of strategy is knowing where you're competing on the adoption lifecycle. Pretty big question. We could save our clients a lot of troubles if during what they call the I to L phase, I to L is from the investigation phase in the lab to the lab phase in developing product, they're thinking about specs and speeds and feeds. Wouldn't it be cool if some of the future product marketing people in that meeting ask themselves one little question, which is, when this product launches this category, where will it land on this thing? That can solve a lot of questions and address a lot of problems in advance. You know, we get a lot of our client requests from people who thought they were going to go to Tornado or Main Street, but they're sitting here in the deepest, darkest, most cavernous part of the chasm where you need a flashlight to find your way around. And at that point, it's, uh-oh, time's ticking. Our GM gave us 12 months to figure out a way to get a path to profitability, or else we're going to be cut.